Good morning, English 12. This is Mr. G. Today we're beginning our unit on critical lenses. We're going to be reading some short stories, and we're going to use something called critical lenses, which I will soon explain and clarify what that means in order to read and interpret these texts. So the first item you need, if you are in class watching this video, I just gave you some papers. The front page of that collection of papers should look like this. Say critical lens notes. Please put your name and period number on it. And then you'll see here under lens, there's a box here. Here you'll label. And then here you'll write the definition of that, which I'm going to give you on a Google slide presentation. And then questions to ask. These are not questions that you will generate, but they are questions that I'll provide you. And then these are the questions you should be asking as you read a text when applying one of these lenses. Okay, so I have this paper out. It should be the first link on Google Classroom if you're absent and doing this after the fact. And we are going to begin our presentation on critical lenses. So first of all, anyone have any clue to what that might mean, critical lenses? Right now, I'm sure everyone in the classroom is just shouting out many answers what they think a critical lens is. So let's just listen for a moment. Okay, so it sounds like you're on the right track. Critical lens. So anytime I get a term that maybe I'm unfamiliar with, I'm going to look at both words, break them down, see what I don't know, and see if I can figure out what it means. We know what the word critical means. It can mean several different things. It can mean one, inclined to judge severely and find fault, as in quit criticizing me. Or two, it can be characterized by careful, exact evaluation and judgment. For example, a critical reading, much like the close readings we've been doing in class. Then lens. It's a piece of transparent substance, usually glass, for magnification or in correcting defects of vision. So for those of you who wear glasses, we look through them and it helps us see. And number two, a channel through which something can be seen or understood. She was studying the writing through the lens of an FBI agent. Okay, so that's the perspective. And that is a metaphor. We're not, when we use critical lenses, actually looking through a piece of glass, but it's the way we're looking at a text. So putting it together, critical plus lens, it's a careful, exact evaluation and judgment. A channel through which something can be seen or understood. Okay, that is a critical lens. So just to kind of give you a visual representation of what this might look like, we're going to look at a scene, part of a scene, from a movie kind of old. You may have seen it before. It's called National Treasure, starring Nicolas Cage. In the movie, they find all these, like the Declaration of Independence and all these old historical documents and artifacts that become very valuable into figuring out this puzzle. And they use this, what he calls an eye clear device, which are these fancy glasses, to see things on the Declaration of Independence, on maps that you wouldn't see without them. You'll get the idea as we watch. That's the bad guy.
I found this. Some kind of ocular device. Vision to see the treasure past. Let me take this.
Well, they're like early American X-ray specs.
Benjamin Franklin invented something like these.
I think he invented these.
So what do we do with them?
We look through it.
Here, help me.
What?
It's just that the last time this was here, it was being signed.
Ben, there's another tour coming.
Turn it over.
Careful.
Spectacles.
What do you see?
What is it? Is it Treasure Map?
here at the wall. Spelled with 2 E's. Take a look.
Wow.
Why can't they just say go to this place and here's the treasure, spent wisely?
Oh no.
How'd they find us?
Ian has nearly unlimited resources. And he's smart.
I don't think we can get out of here without being spotted.
Well, we don't want them to have the declaration or the glasses, but we especially don't want them to have them both together.
So what do we do?
You separate the lock from the key. We're splitting up.
Good idea.
Okay, then action ensues. But as you saw, when they put those glasses on, they saw something that wasn't there when you just looked at it with the naked eye. And so when we use these critical lenses, when we read a text, they help us to see things, interpret things maybe we would not have if we were just reading it with no focus. So this explains why we use them. We get to look at text in a different way. They guide our reading and interpretations based on ideas, themes, and concepts. Just like that National Treasure clip, we can see so much more with these lenses than simply just reading it. And again, they're about interpretations and offering more insight. Again, you don't need to write any of this. In a moment, we'll label in those sidebars, and then we'll give the definitions of these 5 critical lenses. They are reader response. If you want to, you can write that in that first little sidebar. Reader response. The next one is called historical lens. Then socioeconomic lens. Gender, also referred to often as the feminist lens, and psychological. So we begin with the reader response. So again, in that first skinny box, you should write the definition. The next one you'll write the label, then you'll write the definition in the first wider box. Then the third wider box, the questions you should be asking as you're reading using this lens. So again, label it reader response. The definition, you do not need to write this plain text down here. Just write the bold text here. So, reader response lens, definition. I will pause at the end if you need a little bit more time. If you need a lot more time, I'm posting this on Google Classroom. So if we're going too fast, or it seems we're going too fast right now, you'll have time to go back later and then pause or fast forward as necessary to get the information. But the definition of reader response is you gain personal meaning via, and via, if you're not familiar with that word, is just another way of saying through or by, thoughts, mood, experiences, feelings. All of these are from the reader. What do you think as a reader, feel, experience, and how that influences your interpretation of the text? Okay, so again, this here should be in that definition box. Then the next box that says questions, we're thinking about how does the text relate to you, differ from you, and affect you. So again, these questions help you to figure out your opinion on the text, what it means to you, what it makes you think of, what it makes you feel, etc. This is the easiest one to apply because it's all about you. There's no right or wrong answers. It's kind of your personal reaction to the text. Okay, again, I'm moving on. If you don't have any of these in those boxes, just pause. You'll have time to go back in Google Classroom as necessary. The next lens is, so in the first skinny box where you should label it, it is the historical lens. The definition. Learn the historical time frame via the author's life and history, the setting of the text, the perspective of the author and the characters, and the societal expectations. What does society expect from the characters? Okay, this helps you see what's happening historically at the time this text was written or created. The questions you should ask if you're using it. How does the text, or how is it influenced by the author, the time they lived in, the reason for writing it, their purpose? Does it change your view on a historical event? Or does it show you about societal expectations? Race, gender, economic. These questions help you to figure out how the history of the piece and the country influence what is being said. Okay, so this is just about history. What was going on at the time it was written? If a big war was going on, or if the 9/11 attacks just happened right before something was being written, it probably had some influence on the author as they were writing it. The socioeconomic lens. Okay, so first, got to pause here to think about what this means exactly. Socio, if we look at it, or if we just look at these first three letters, S-O-C, what other words do we see those letters in? Many of you are probably thinking about Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, social media, right? Social, that's people interacting, society. And then economics, as most of you know from your social studies classes, that has to do with money, how people get it, how it's spent, all of that. Okay, so the definition shows structure in society. The class system, authoritative figures, so who's in charge, who makes the rules, who's the rulers, the leaders, who has control and power, and economic structures. How does a society make money, get money? How is money taken away from other people? Again, it's about control and power, not just money. So we think about how can you learn about the text when figuring these out. What does the society value based on these things, these structures? Questions you should ask as you're reading. Does it represent different demographics? This word demographics you probably heard a lot. You hear it a lot when we're talking about advertising or doing surveys. That's just different groups of people, maybe based on race, age, geography, different sections of people. Does it represent different class structures? When we talk about class in the United States, we talk about lower class, working class, middle class, upper class. In India, we talked about Gandhi yesterday, and we talked about civil disobedience. In in India, they have a whole class system. I mean, the Brahmin are the highest class. They're supposed to be the holy people. On the bottom rung of that class system, you have the untouchable caste, which are supposed to live in the street, and people aren't even supposed to look at them. Okay, so different class structures. These questions help you to figure out how the economy and economic social expectations affect the text. Okay, what power structures do we see in it? If you have more questions about this one as we go, we'll talk about it live after we watch the video. Gender lens. Okay, gender, as I said, this is also often called the feminist lens. Gender, we know someone's, sex, if we're using a more biological term. And again, the definition, understanding attitude toward gender roles. Difference between men and women and many of the other gender designations that we have. Which genders are valued more, expectations for all genders, and how gender is represented. Okay, it's extremely important because so much can be learned by looking at the gender of characters and thinking how these characters are portrayed. Questions you should ask if you're using this lens: how are the genders defined, the expectation of gender roles, and reflect the stereotypes of genders. And now, of course, gender identity is such a big issue in our culture and our society. This has become a very complex and multifaceted issue when we're reading texts. And then by attempting to answer these questions about genders, you can see through multiple lenses, also historical, socioeconomical, etc., because all of those can have gender roles as a consideration inside of them. Moving on. The psychological lens. Okay, so this, you can gain understanding of human behavior looking at the character's internal motivations, psychological state, feelings, and personality. Again, internal motivations we talked about. Internal motivations are what makes a character do what they do inside, their feelings and thoughts. External would be outside forces acting upon them. Internal motivations is just what makes someone do what they're doing. So if you can figure out why a character behaves in a certain way, your understanding of the text really increases. Questions you should use when utilizing this lens: how are the characters and why are they thinking in a certain way, feeling a certain way, acting a certain way, and believing certain things? These questions help you to figure out what a character does and why. Okay, this allows you to analyze character and perform a character study if needed. Just so basically look at characters in depth. Okay, so now what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to pause it here in a second. But now we're going to kind of apply this. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you up in the Google slide presentation 6 examples of vintage or very, very old advertisements. Advertisements for certain products. Okay, each ad focuses on a different lens. Okay, I'm going to give you a set of questions. If you're doing this on Google Classroom or if we're doing it live, should be the second link if you're doing a